The courtroom was a cathedral of power. Dark wood walls, sharp echoes, and an eerie silence that settled like dust before a storm. Ava Mitchell stood at the defendant's table, her back straight, hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her eyes didn't flinch as the bailiff announced, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harold Whitmore." The heavy doors creaked open, and Whitmore strode in. Silver hair, cold blue eyes, and a look on his face like the whole world owed him something. He didn't look at Ava. He didn't have to. He'd already judged her the moment he saw her name on the docket. As he took his seat, the courtroom settled. The moment stretched long, thick with unspoken words. Then, with a sneer curling at the corner of his lips, Whitmore spoke. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice dripping with condescension. "Another case of inner-city drama wasting my time. Miss Mitchell, is it?" He looked down over the edge of his glasses, like peering at something he found under his shoe. "You do know how a courtroom works, don't you?" Ava's jaw tightened, but she didn't blink. She'd been warned about this man. Everyone had. Her lawyer, other defendants, even the clerk who whispered, "Good luck," under her breath when Ava checked in. "This is a civil case regarding a wrongful arrest," her attorney, Marcus Gray, said evenly. "My client is here seeking justice." Whitmore snorted. "Justice? Oh, that's adorable." Gasps echoed around the courtroom. A few people shifted uncomfortably. The stenographer hesitated, then kept typing. Ava's fingers curled into fists at her sides. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, smug and slow. "Let me guess. Racial profiling, police misconduct, emotional trauma, the usual parade of pity?" Marcus stood taller. "The evidence is clear. Her brother was arrested for stealing a car that was registered in his name. We have documentation, surveillance footage, even the purchase agreement." Whitmore held up a hand like he was swatting away a fly. "Save it. I've seen this play before. Always the same ending." Ava finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I'm not here for pity. I'm here because the law was broken." Whitmore chuckled, low and mean. "People like you always think you understand the law. But the law doesn't care about feelings, Miss Mitchell. It cares about facts. And frankly, your case smells like a waste of oxygen." Murmurs spread through the room. Ava's heart pounded in her chest, but she held her ground. She had come for justice. What she found was a man drunk on power and prejudice. Then, without warning, Whitmore slammed his gavel down. "Enough. If I wanted a lecture, I'd watch daytime television. Let's get this over with. Call your first witness. I'd like to be out of here before I die of boredom." But before Marcus could respond, the heavy double doors of the courtroom burst open with a loud crash. Uniformed officers rushed in, fast, focused, and deadly serious. Everyone turned. Whitmore blinked, confused, annoyed. "What the hell is this?" he barked. The lead officer, tall and imposing, stopped just short of the bench. His badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Judge Harold Whitmore," the officer said, voice like granite, "you are under arrest." Gasps. Chaos. A stunned silence broke like glass. Ava froze. Whitmore's eyes widened. "What?" The officer stepped forward, reaching for cuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." The judge tried to rise, but another officer flanked him. The courtroom was no longer his kingdom. And for the first time in a long time, Harold Whitmore wasn't in control. Whitmore's face twisted in disbelief. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For a man who always had something smug to say, the silence was deafening. "You can't do this," he finally blurted. "I'm a judge." The officer didn't flinch. "Exactly why it's taken this long. But today, the law catches up with you." The cuffs clicked tight around his wrists. The sound echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Ava didn't move. She wasn't sure she could. Her legs felt like concrete, her lungs frozen mid-breath. Judge Whitmore, the same man who mocked her, belittled her, told her she didn't belong, was now being pulled from the bench like a criminal. And somehow, it didn't feel real. Marcus stepped beside her, whispering, "Do you know what this means?" Ava shook her head slowly. "I have no idea." Reporters in the back of the courtroom were already scrambling. Phones raised, whispers turning into urgent calls. Outside, she could hear the sirens growing louder. As Whitmore was dragged toward the exit, he turned his head. His eyes locked on Ava's, burning with something between hatred and disbelief. "This isn't over," he hissed. Ava didn't respond. She didn't have to. The sight of him in chains was enough. Outside, flashing red and blue lights bathed the courthouse steps. The crowd had gathered fast. Photographers, activists, legal watchdogs. The story was already spreading like wildfire. Judge Harold Whitmore. Arrested. In open court. Inside a black SUV, Detective Brandon Carter watched the scene unfold from behind tinted glass. His jaw was set, eyes tracking every detail. "It's done," his partner said from the passenger seat. Carter didn't take his eyes off Whitmore. Not yet. He opened the door and stepped out, his badge glinting on his belt. As he approached the courthouse, officers made way. Whitmore saw him, and his face changed, from outrage to pure venom. "You," Whitmore spat. Carter stopped a few feet away. "You thought you were untouchable. I am the law." "No," Carter said coolly. "You're just a man. And your shield just cracked wide open." Whitmore lunged, but the officers tightened their grip. "You think this'll stick?" Whitmore barked. "You think they'll let this happen to me? I made the right friends." Carter leaned in just close enough for only Whitmore to hear. "And those friends? They're already running. You're the dead weight now. And they're about to cut the rope." Whitmore's nostrils flared. But behind his fury, something flickered. Fear. Ava watched it all from the courthouse doors. She wasn't sure how to feel. Vindicated. Shaken? Relieved. Maybe all of it. Maybe none of it. All she knew was this. The man who tried to bury her voice had just been silenced by his own past. She turned to Marcus. "What now?" He looked at her with a calm, measured gaze. "Now, we see how deep this hole really goes. Because men like Whitmore, they didn't fall alone. And this was just the first domino." Detective Brandon Carter stood at the base of the courthouse steps, watching the SUV doors slam shut. The vehicle pulled away, its tires screeching slightly as it vanished into traffic, carrying Judge Harold Whitmore to a federal holding facility. But Carter didn't smile. He turned, pulling his phone from his coat pocket and dialing a number without hesitation. It rang once. "Lawson," a voice answered. "It's done," Carter said. "He's in custody. On camera. In front of half the damn press corps." A pause. "Good," Assistant District Attorney Rachel Lawson replied. "But you know what this means?" "Yeah," Carter said, jaw tightening. "We just became targets." Back at the precinct, a storm was already brewing. Walls covered in photographs. Maps with red string connecting judges, cops, lawyers. A web of influence. And at the center of it, Harold Whitmore. He hadn't just bent the law. He'd owned it, controlled it, sold it. Rachel stood over the evidence table, flipping through documents Carter had spent months gathering. Bank transfers, property deals, sealed case files that mysteriously disappeared. "This isn't just corruption," she muttered. "This is a machine." Carter nodded. And Whitmore wasn't the engine. He was just a cog. Rachel looked up, eyes sharp. "Then who's pulling the levers?" Meanwhile, inside a secure federal detention center, Judge Whitmore sat alone in a cold, steel gray room. No robe, no courtroom, just concrete, bars, and a metal table bolted to the floor. His hands were cuffed, but his eyes hadn't lost their fire. He stared at the wall like he could burn a hole through it. A guard opened the door, stepping aside to allow a visitor inside. A tall man in a tailored grey suit entered, briefcase in hand. "Mr. Whitmore," the man said, smooth and practiced. "I represent several interested parties. You may call me Langley." Whitmore narrowed his eyes. "Interested in what?" "Your survival," Langley replied without hesitation. He sat across from the judge and opened the case. Inside, a dossier, a burner phone, a plane ticket, and a choice. "You've made a mess," Langley said calmly. "But if you play this right, you walk out of this with your name intact. Maybe even your life." Whitmore's laugh was bitter. "And if I don't?" Langley's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then I'd advise you to enjoy this concrete. Because someone is going to make sure you don't wake up tomorrow." Whitmore's jaw tightened. Langley leaned in. "This isn't about you anymore, Your Honor. This is about everything, you know." Back at Ava Mitchell's apartment, the news blared from her phone. "Breaking. Judge Harold Whitmore arrested on federal corruption charges." She paused it. Her hands were trembling. Not from fear. From something deeper. Vindication. But it wasn't peace. Not yet. Her brother was still behind bars. Her fight wasn't over. And she knew enough about men like Whitmore to understand this arrest was just the first swing in a much larger war. She turned to Marcus, seated across the table reviewing paperwork. "Do you think he'll walk?" Marcus looked up. "If he talks, maybe. If his people get to him, probably." Ava swallowed hard. "Then we can't let that happen." Because Whitmore going free didn't just mean justice denied, it meant the system won again. And Ava wasn't about to let that happen. Night fell over the city like a velvet curtain. Quiet, heavy, and deceptive. Inside a modest brick building downtown, Detective Brandon Carter paced his office, fingers tracing over a map dotted with names that all led back to one man, Whitmore. But there were too many connections, too many sealed files, dropped cases, and convenient transfers. This wasn't just judicial misconduct, it was organized control. And if Whitmore talked, those strings would start to unravel. His phone buzzed. Carter snatched it up. "You'd better tell me you have something," he said. Rachel Lawson's voice came sharp through the line. "We pulled his call logs from the past 72 hours. And 2 burner numbers. Both encrypted. One of them bounced off a tower near the federal courthouse 30 minutes after his arraignment." Carter's stomach dropped. "So someone's already trying to reach him." "Not just reach him," Rachel said. "Coordinate with him." Carter grabbed his coat. "Already moving. Meet me at the facility. We need eyes on him. All night." Meanwhile, in the federal holding cell, Whitmore stared at the ceiling. The dull flicker of the overhead light felt like an interrogation. He hadn't touched the phone Langley gave him. Not yet. But his mind wouldn't stop racing. He remembered every secret deal. Every bribe. Every name. People who had promised him protection, silence, loyalty. Now they were ghosts. The second his face hit the headlines, they vanished. And he knew what that meant. He'd become a liability. The question now wasn't if someone was coming for him. It was when. Just after midnight, Ava sat at her kitchen table, the glow from her laptop illuminating her tired face. She was reading court records, hundreds of them. Every case Whitmore had presided over involving young black men. The pattern was so clear. It felt like a scarlet letter. He hadn't just been corrupt. He'd been methodical. Marcus sat beside her, quiet, watching her work. "You planning to build a new case from scratch?" he asked gently. "I'm planning to bury him," she replied. "Not just for James. For all of them." Marcus nodded. "Then we'd better stay ahead. Because he's not going down easy." At the same hour, inside a dim corridor at the detention center, a janitor pushed a cart past the cell block. No one looked twice. He moved like he belonged, steady pace, uniform crisp, head down. He stopped outside Whitmore's cell, pulled out a rag, checked his watch, then whispered, 10 minutes. Whitmore didn't move. He didn't even blink. But something cold slid into his spine. The janitor walked away without looking back. 10 minutes. That was the window. He didn't know what was coming. Help, or elimination. Either way, it was starting. Outside the detention facility, Carter's car screeched into the parking lot. He didn't wait for backup. He slammed the door and moved fast, flashing his badge at the guards without a word. Rachel Lawson was already at the entrance, coat pulled tight, her face carved in focus. "Talk to me," Carter said. "One of the guards flagged something weird," she replied. "A janitor on the night shift didn't check in through the usual log. He's inside right now." Carter didn't hesitate. "Get eyes on Whitmore. Now." Inside, Whitmore stood in the center of his cell. His breath was shallow, fists tight, eyes darting toward the door like it might suddenly explode. Then, footsteps, calm, deliberate. The door slid open. A man stepped in. Not Langley, not a guard, just a figure in dark scrubs, face obscured by a surgical mask and a black ball cap. In one hand, he held a clipboard. In the other, a small black case. "Time to take your vitals," he said quietly. Whitmore's jaw clenched. "I know who sent you." The man didn't respond. Just set the clipboard down and opened the case. Inside, a syringe. "Wait." Whitmore started, stepping back. Too late. The man lunged. Whitmore staggered, crashing into the metal bench. The intruder moved fast, one hand on his throat, the other aiming the needle for his neck. But Whitmore didn't get this far in life without fighting dirty. He twisted, bit down on the attacker's wrist, and roared. The syringe clattered to the ground. Outside the hallway, guards heard the commotion and rushed in. The door burst open. "Step away from the inmate," one of them shouted. The attacker bolted, grabbing a chair, hurling it through the narrow window, sending shattered glass flying. Then he vaulted through, vanishing into the night like a phantom. Carter and Rachel were seconds behind. Carter leaned over Whitmore, who was coughing hard, still shaken. "You good?" Whitmore's face was pale. His voice, hoarse. "That wasn't a hit. That was an extraction." Rachel's brows furrowed. "What?" "He wasn't trying to kill me," Whitmore said, eyes wide. "He was trying to get me out." Carter looked at Rachel. And suddenly, it all made sense. "Someone wants to erase this case before it goes to trial," Carter said slowly. "Not by silencing him, but by disappearing him." Rachel exhaled. "So we lock this place down. Nobody in, nobody out." Carter stood, jaw tight. "No. We move him. We go dark." Rachel frowned. "You want to take him off grid?" "I want to keep him breathing long enough to burn the people who built this empire." Carter snapped. Because now it wasn't just about Whitmore. It was about who was scared enough to break him out, and who was willing to kill to keep him quiet. The fluorescent lights of the detention center buzzed like angry hornets as Carter and Rachel made their decision. Whitmore sat slumped on the bench, his arrogance finally cracked, replaced by something raw. Survival instinct. "We move him now," Carter said, turning to Rachel. "No paperwork. No trail." Rachel nodded, already typing on her phone. "I'll call in a favor. There's a safe house outside the city, used for witness protection. Even his people won't know about it." Whitmore looked up, his voice uncharacteristically small. "You think this will work?" Carter leaned in, his face inches from the judge's. "No. But it's the only shot you've got." The car ride had been silent. Whitmore stared out the tinted window as the city lights faded into countryside darkness. Ava sat in the front passenger seat, her brother's case file clutched in her hands. She hadn't planned to come, but when Marcus called saying Whitmore might flip on the officers who framed her brother, she demanded to be there. The safe house was an unremarkable cabin surrounded by dense forest. Carter swept the perimeter while Rachel set up secure communications inside. Whitmore sat at the wooden table, cuffs still on. "You want names," he said quietly. "I'll give them to you. But I want immunity." Rachel laughed sharply. "You don't get to bargain. You're a corrupt judge facing life in prison. The only deal here is you talk, and maybe you don't rot in Gen Pop." Ava stepped forward. "And my brother? His case?" Whitmore's eyes flicked to her. "Officer Grayson planted that evidence. He's dirty. Always has been. I signed off on it because that's what the system expected." Ava's hands shook. "Expected? The quotas," Whitmore said, looking away. "Certain neighborhoods, certain profiles. They made the stats look good. Kept the funding flowing." The room went still. Carter's knuckles whitened around his coffee mug. "You son of a," he started, but Ava cut him off. "Give me your phone," she said to Rachel. Rachel hesitated, then handed it over. Ava turned on the recorder and placed it in front of Whitmore. "Say it again, for the record." By morning, the dominoes were already falling. Officer Grayson was arrested at his home, still in uniform. 3 other judges were named in Whitmore's confession. The DA's office issued warrants for 12 officers across 3 precincts. Ava watched the news coverage from Marcus's office. Her brother's case was being fast-tracked for review. "It's not over," Marcus said. "But it's a start." Ava nodded. Somewhere, Whitmore was in a new cell, waiting to see if his cooperation would buy him any mercy. She didn't care what happened to him. Not really. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "They'll come for you too. Watch your back." She deleted it. 1 month later, the protest outside the courthouse was peaceful. Hundreds held signs with names, Ava's brothers among them. She stood at the podium, microphone in hand. "This isn't justice," she said to the crowd. "It's accountability. And we're just getting started." Across the street, Carter watched from his car. His phone rang. "You're off the case," his captain said. "Effective immediately." Carter smiled. "Too late. The files are already public." He hung up and drove away, the protest fading in his rearview mirror. Somewhere, in another city, another courtroom, another system, the work would continue. But for today, it was enough.